But I would say anybody who is interested, like if you like spending time with kids or young people, you're probably a great candidate to serve as a sub. Welcome to Hallway Conversations. We're a trio of educators who have plenty of questions about teaching and learning and school culture, and we believe in the value of reflection and collaboration as we seek to keep growing as teachers. This podcast is our place for thinking out loud together about issues in education and why they might matter to Christian educators. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello everyone, welcome to Hallway Conversations. My name is Matt Beamers.
I'm Abby DeGoe.
And I'm Dave Mulder.
Friends, thanks for joining us. We're always looking for topics of conversation and feedback, so please email us or drop us a line at hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. That's hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. We want to hear from you, and your feedback is important to us. Dave and Abby, I was just thinking about a time when I was an assistant principal back in British Columbia, and part of my job as an assistant principal was finding substitute teachers. We called them TOCs, teachers on call, and
I like that.
Being a TOC is not for the faint of heart.
No, that's right.
There's a lot of joy in the work, but there's just a lot of work in the work, and it's hard work. And I was thinking about this when we had a substitute teacher who came in and just was having a time of it with one class, and part of the work that day was bringing her class to the library, and there was these two guys in her class, and they were good friends, and they were there for a good time, not a long time.
Sure.
I think they ended up having a play wrestling match, but it caused a lot of anxiety for the TOC, and she wasn't sure what to do. And for some reason, I was thinking about that and thought about her response to that was, well, what do I do? And she just grabbed a cup of cold water and literally threw the water on them, and it just brought them to a stop, partly because no teacher had ever thrown water on them before. And,
that's so good.
And she just calmly asked them to stop and go back, and they did, I think, partly out of shock. But so I was thinking about that story, and then I was thinking about being an elementary school principal, and for whatever reason, I needed to step into a kindergarten class for it was 20 minutes. It was not even 20 minutes. And it just made me realize that work, again, is especially teaching 5-year-olds and coming in there as even a short-term sub. High energy, and it made me realize, how wonderful there's a special place in heaven for kindergarten teachers, and there's a special place in heaven for people who are willing and able to sub and do a wonderful job in kindergarten. So the topic today is about substitute teachers, or teachers on call, and just what a gift they are from the Lord, but it's not easy work. And I don't know, what comes to mind if I say to you substitute teacher or teacher on call? What sort of things come to mind, Dave? What comes to mind?
I'm laughing because I had when I was a middle school teacher, I had a couple of people who subbed for me fairly regularly, and middle school is not always a place people want to come as a substitute, right? Like they're more like third grade. Give me the third graders, right? And so I had two people who regularly subbed for me, but they were so different, right? The one always wanted detailed lesson plans, and she would have just tell me exactly what you want me to do, and I will do those things. And she did, but I would write in great detail because that was what she wanted for that.
To be done,
right? Totally. Yep. And the other would be kind of just give me a general indication, what's the topic and kind of where do you hope they'll land by the end of it? And that stressed me out so bad. But the longer I taught, the more I kind of realized both of those are fine approaches, and the kids are fine, right? I was just so grateful that there's someone who's ready and willing to step into a middle school science lab and just roll with it, and so it was great.
No, for sure. How about you, Abby, when you think about that?
I kind of think of my experiences. So I graduated in December from Dort, and so I subbed for a whole semester before my first teaching job.
You got that first-hand experience as a sub.
As a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, and so I think of that, right? And all of the different classrooms and the wide variety, not only of subs that you get, but also cooperating teachers and what you're left with, right?
Yeah.
And as a sub, I always appreciated the times when I didn't have to just babysit.
Yeah, to have something to actually do.
Right.
Yeah.
So because that becomes putting out fires of behavior.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Because the students know that.
Absolutely.
The students know that.
Students are not dumb. Right,
That's
and
right.
I'm a high school teacher, so I usually subbed in high school, middle school, and they have that figured out pretty quickly,
That's
whether
right.
or not you're doing something of substance. And if there was nothing of substance to do, then it became stop touching that person, stop talking, stop doing, and I did not like that.
No.
That was
I
not
can imagine.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was fun to see a wide variety of schools and management styles and people and students.
I
Yeah,
right
from
away
that
when I was thinking
experience.
as you were talking, I was thinking about Kathy Ecoff in Manhattan, Montana. God bless you. I don't know if Kathy will ever hear this. Thinking about Wilma Vanderleek in Surrey, British Columbia. That when I was a teacher, like and Kathy or Wilma would come into sub, I could always breathe a little bit easier because they love students and they wanted even as substitute teachers they wanted to invest in the relational part of it.
Yeah. Yep.
And they wanted to invest in the learning part of it. And so I'm just thinking about them right now. It's like when someone like Wilma or Kathy came in, that you left somewhat detailed plans, but also that I also knew that the kids could feel from them that they were loved and important. And there was just something really cool about seeing a substitute teacher invest in the community, and that you knew that emotionally they would, physically, emotionally they'd be safe, but also that learning would take place. But it isn't for everyone, right? Like
No,
I've
no.
run into teachers who have graduated, who would be really hard for them to sub because they want their own classroom and they want their own space. But I've also run into people who have graduated and said, no, I'm going to only sub. Like this is what I'm going to do.
For that.
They're
preparing
planning for that.
Yeah.
They prefer that. They prefer, hey, like different things every day. They prefer not being in their own classroom. I just know for me it was, I loved having my own space, and yet I know young people who are like, no, like this is giving me the flexibility I want.
I'll say that. So my mom was an elementary teacher. She was a grad from this institution too, and she went and taught in California. When I came along, she stayed home with us as kids. And once my brothers were in school, then she became like the go-to sub lady for that local Christian school. And she would teach any grade level. She would teach any content, for that elementary school. And everybody knew Mrs. Mulder because she taught them all. And it was the kind of thing, like it's a small enough school. It's a big school, but it's small enough that she was a known quantity,
But
and
that's
she
a
got to know the
gift
kids.
for the kids and for the admin.
For the admin, for the teachers, that they had a level of trust in her that she was going to do well with these kids.
My kids have a couple of subs too that sub regularly at their schools.
Yeah.
Are at their school who they love and who are just a gift to that institution too. There's one, Mr. Ted, who subs
Mr. Ted.
for my kids. That's his first name, but he doesn't want to be called Mr. Hangeveld, so they call him Mr. Ted. And he had a teaching license years and years ago. He hasn't used for a long time, but his grandkids go to my kids' school, and so one of the things he does now in his retirement is he comes and subs in junior high and the older grades, and my kids just think that's the greatest. He has a pilot's license.
Oh, yeah.
And so he'll tell them stories about his airplane, and they just think, and what a gift that is to, there's not a lot of male teachers in elementary, and so that in itself is fun for them, and he's just a great, because that's a tough age, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade.
Oh, it's my sweet spot.
It is, I know. But it can be.
And it's not for everybody,
It's
right?
not.
And so that's one of the joys that I have too, given the flexibility that we have in certain times of the year. For a couple of the local schools, I got on their sub list now, and I don't advertise. Oh shoot, I just said it on the podcast right now. But I love to get into local schools when I can do that, and middle school is my sweet spot, and I know it's hard to staff, and so the joy for me of coming, it's different. I was going to say the joy. The difference is you don't have the relational capital that you have when you're the normal teacher who's there every day, day in and day out. So that part is hard. I would say that first. I don't know if that resonates with your experience
Very
too.
much.
That you just have to kind of be willing to roll with it and Like
Yeah.
that management piece is tricky.
It's actually really good, I think, classroom management practice.
Oh, yes.
Because you have to think on your feet
all the time.
all the time. Yeah.
But the flip side of that is I just get to do the best parts of teaching. I show
Yeah.
up, I've got content that I'm going to teach, I've got a lesson plan that someone else developed for me. We do the work, and at the end of the day, if I have time to grade a stack of papers or something like that, I
Yeah.
will if I can. But if I don't, okay, then I also, that's not the responsibility for me either, right? And I don't know, there's some joy in that
Right.
for me.
Do
Go ahead.
you both think there is something we can do to encourage more subs
Yeah.
to enter the profession? I just know a couple admins who will say too that that is the hardest part of their job is to
I think-
find people.
I think when I was overseeing TOCs, and I totally understand why I did this, is that there was those few people on the top of my list that I would use all the time. And that was wonderful, you know, the Mr. Teds, right?
Yeah.
The Dr. Daves, like, because you can breathe easy as an admin. But I also think there's something to be said about finding people and developing them into that role as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you, just even for myself as an admin is like, hey, how do I expand this list? And those 3 go-to people say, no, now what do I do?
Right.
And so I think there's a benefit for developing teachers, but I think there's a benefit for the learning community to take some risks. Or even, if you get here's Abby DeGroot, she's just graduated from university, but she's never been here. Hey, maybe we invest a couple of half days to just have her in the school working alongside another teacher for
Sure,
a day or
yeah.
two, so that she just gets an idea of the system. Like, I think the way we did it was you drop your resume off. The first time you hear from me is when we need you in a classroom.
Right.
Well, how does attendance work?
Right.
So I just think about that even administratively, like, I could have been way more hospitable, right? Like,
Sure.
here's, hey, come for a day, or here's some of the practices and protocols. I think it was more like, here's the lesson plan, here's how you do attendance, I'll come check on you in a bit. And it's like, that just wasn't super
Right.
hospitable.
When I did sub, it was much more enjoyable to sub in the places I had student taught, for example.
Oh, sure. Well, because you're
Right.
familiar, right?
Right, because I knew some of the kids, there were some familiar faces, I
Yeah.
knew like where things were, I
Right.
wasn't lost.
You're not lost in the
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also just think from a practical level, what are we paying our teachers
Yeah.
on call? What are we paying our
What are we paying our teachers?
What are we paying
and
our
what are we
teachers?
paying our
Totally.
subs?
But since we're
Yes,
talking about
both.
substitute, totally, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we want to draw good people into our classrooms, like, I have to remind myself, even as I'm sitting here, and I didn't do this as a principal, but right, like, if I think about, again, what parents pay for tuition, and the amount of then, if there's 20 students in a class, the amount of tuition that's being paid that day by parents to have their
yes.
kids there,
It's not insignificant.
it's not insignificant. And so parents deserve, and so do those students, to have us have high quality people in there. And to have high quality people in there costs money.
Yeah.
Whether it's for our teachers, like you say, but also for our teacher on call, right?
Absolutely.
Like, that would be discouraging to me as a parent to say, oh, like, I'm paying literally at faith-based schools, right?
Yep.
At faith-based schools, we're paying this much tuition, and my child comes home and says, well, I watched a movie all day, or we
Right.
did this, or we did,
Yeah.
well, that's disconcerting for a number of reasons. So I do think we need to honor the work of our teachers and our TOCs in what we compensate them with. So those are just a couple of things that come to mind.
But I would say, I'm biased, of course, because I love kids and I like hanging out with middle schoolers. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a teacher, right? So, but I would say anybody who is interested, like if you like spending time with kids or young people, you're probably a great candidate.
Yeah.
To serve as a sub, right? And
But I think that's an important one not to just gloss over.
no,
either.
like you have to like
Because
kids.
I think sometimes people are in an education who do not
and
enjoy
sadly, that's the
children.
fact,
Yeah.
right?
or high schoolers
Right,
or
right.
whatever age group And that's not insignificant.
Right.
Yeah.
They can tell.
Yeah. Oh, and for sure, the kids are very savvy.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But I think that would be my thing, right? If you enjoy spending time with young people, you're probably a great candidate to be a sub. And if you would reach out to your local administrator and just say, hey, I'd like to give this a try at least, I'm sure they will work with you, whatever's required to get you the authorization you need to do that work.
Which can be different depending on where you are and what kind of school you're subbing in, right?
That's right.
But it also makes me think, so then my question is, hey, you need to love students, whatever age whether it's young adults or 5-year-olds. From your experience, what else do you think makes for a successful TOC day, a successful substitute day? So you got to come in loving students, but
that's not enough.
Yeah, totally. Right. So what else would you say say for those thinking about it, or those who do it and maybe have struggled with it, or it doesn't bring as much joy as they like? What are some things that maybe they could change or do different to say, hey, here's how you might optimize your time there and make this a more life-giving experience?
Yeah.
How about for you, Dave? When you go, I know you do it locally.
So some of my go-to strategies, right? Like I don't have that built-in relationship with students, right? Because you're there as a teacher, even a teacher on call, you have a level of authority because of your office, just when you walk in the door. But students will perceive very quickly if you don't have your hands on the reins, right? And so I think that's part of it for me. I have to build some rapport with students because I'd rather not have to come in as a disciplinarian type, right? And so I usually come with a ridiculous story about myself to introduce myself to them, right?
So share a bit of who you are.
I'm going to tell them a little bit, right? Some self-disclosure for me, but it also establishes like, hey, I'm a credible person to be here, right? Now it helps because I've had that teaching background, right? If you're coming in as a teacher on call and you don't have that teaching background, you're going to have your own story, right? But what's going to build rapport and demonstrate that you've got the authority to be here? I think that matters coming in. And then the other piece of it for me is you do have to be willing to keep your hand on the rein too, right? Like there's things that you have to do to guide and direct what's happening in the classroom. And I don't love the term classroom management just because I'm always wondering what am I managing then, right? I'm managing people? Am I managing the work? Am I managing the behaviors? What am I managing? But what I mean by that is to say, you do have to manage what's happening in the classroom because you're the person who's in charge here, even if it's just for today. Right?
You have to know what's going on. You have to know what's coming next.
Right. And so to show up early enough in the day to ask the questions that you have that you're going to need to have answers for.
What you, Abby, practical advice might you give to someone who's entering a classroom as a guest teacher?
Right. I think I really like the building rapport. I think some sort of puzzle or game, very short, right? Something that doesn't take a lot of time. Even something silly like, like you have an attendance sheet, but I don't know, something with names or something just to get to know at least who they are, make sure they're not pulling something or...
Calling on students by name is a powerful thing. And,
it is.
And so as much as you can, and I know it's not perfect and you can't do it all the time, especially when you're coming in for one day as a substitute, but if you can call on students by name, I think that goes a long way.
Laughter.
Right.
Some sort of generous, personal, interaction. And then I think, some sort of make sure that they understand that you know what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. So because it can feel chaotic to them.
Well, yes.
It's unsettling.
It is unsettling.
And so for them to have the assurance that this is a credible and competent person who's in here, right, to convey that somehow.
And
I think about that, just how do you're going to get lesson plans, but how do you plan out even the first 10, 15 minutes? I've seen a substitute teacher, hey, fold a piece of paper in half, write your name on it, stick it on your desk, towards the name thing, put 3 things on the back that are interesting about you, share one.
Right.
We're going to build community with each other, but I'm going to get to know you, even though you may never see me again after these 6 hours.
And I think appeal to them as the experts in their class too, right? Tell me what you guys have been doing. Tell me what led up to this.
Great
Here's
strategy.
what we're doing today. Tell me how you usually pass things out. Tell me how you usually, so that they can feel some ownership.
And maybe ease their
too.
anxiety, right? It's not just, and I think that would be the the worrisome, here comes this person, we're going to do it all my way. That has nothing to do with the
Right.
way you've always done it.
That's
It's
right.
only going to increase the anxiety. Whereas you come in with a posture of like, hey, help me understand how it works in here, right? I'm not going to
Exactly.
establish all these new rules. So it's that balance of it of I got to teach who I am,
Right.
but I'm also a guest in this class.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what does it mean to be a good guest,
And that
even as
posture
a
of
teacher?
partnership with the
No,
students.
For sure. Friends, we know that your time is valuable, and we want to thank you for joining us today for another hallway conversation. Whether it's this day, this week, or this month, we hope the Lord gives you what you stand in need of. And as you go into this week, we just want to send you with this blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good week.
This podcast was literally dreamed up during one of our actual hallway conversations. Our music is by Ethan Mulder. Hallway Conversations is created and produced by Matt Beamers, Abby DeGroat, and Dave Mulder. Hey, we have a favor to ask of you. Would you be willing to rate this podcast or write a review in your podcast app? Or if you found this conversation interesting or helpful, would you consider sharing it on your social media? Those things really do help podcasters out, and we would be so, so grateful. Thanks for listening, friends.
In praise of substitute teachers. Here we go.
Exactly. Oh, man. God bless them. Everyone.
That's going to be the tag.
No, that's
Absolutely.